that was published this morning in my daily take over at HartmannReport.com is titled, "If we don't take on bullies, particularly fascist bullies, they never stop." And, you know, I think this is a pretty important point to make. This is, you know, first of all, we've got, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, this infamous bully who once chased David Hogg. Remember the 17-year-old survivor of the Parkland massacre? Chased him down the street shouting at him. I mean, this is who she is, right? And she was basically bullied her pooch, Kevin McCarthy, into threatening congressional hearings if Alvin Bragg goes ahead with an indictment. Following up, Gymnasium Jordan, notorious for his bullying of witnesses before his committee and anybody who brings up his alleged cover-up history, has now been joined by James Comer, who is accused of abusing a girlfriend and then getting her an abortion, and House Administration Committee Chairman Byron Steele in demanding that Bragg give their committees all the information he's gathered on Donald Trump's crimes so that, they can help Trump's defense or something. I mean, this is... Alvin Bragg is having none of it. He said, "We will not be intimidated by attempts to undermine the justice process, nor will we let baseless accusations deter us from fairly applying the law." But what's going on here is the bullying has become the trademark behavior of the Republican Party, largely as the result of Donald Trump jumping on the scene in 2015 in the Republican primary when he successfully bullied Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz. I mean, he cowed the entire bunch of them. They all turned into syncopaths, just anxious to kiss his butt and lick his shoes. And, you know, this parallels the rise of fascism as the political system that the Republican Party is aggressively embracing, from rigging courts and elections to using naked threats of violence, even attempted murder to stop the transition of power on January 6th. Madeleine Albright, in her book Fascism, A Warning, she wrote, and I quote, "Decades ago, George Orwell suggested that the best one-word description of a fascist was bully. And if we don't take on bullies, particularly fascist bullies, they keep going farther and farther until either they win or you do. It always ends in one of the... This is not a static situation. I mean, the West thought that, we could negotiate with Hitler back in the 1930s. Neville Chamberlain went over and came back and said, well, we've negotiated peace in our time. Right, but you can't do that with a bully. Churchill, FDR, Stalin, they ended up taking down Hitler. They realized that, he was never going to stop. He started with Czechoslovakia and Austria and ended up trying to take out Britain, at which point, we entered the war. But you have to stop bullies in their tracks. Now, business people understand this. Anybody who's been in business, I've been a business person my entire adult life. And I can't even begin to describe how many bullies I've encountered in business. It seems often that some of the most successful people in business are just the most psychopathic bullies. And, anybody in business knows that. Everybody's encountered these bullies in business. And, they get away with it. I mean, Donald Trump is another example of this. Henry Ford, John Rockefeller, these guys were major bullies. Bill Eddy is a lawyer and therapist. He writes for Psychology Today. Bullies don't negotiate, they make demands, they make threats, they fight for them. They generally lack the modern skills of win-win. So don't think of their demands as a form of true negotiation. It's more like warfare, and you don't want to give in to that. So here we are right now suffering from an epidemic of political bullying. I mean, billionaires started bullying us in the 1980s at the suggestion of Lewis Powell, demanding that top 74% income tax bracket be collapsed to 25%, which Reagan gave into. Now billionaires are paying 3%. And the Republicans are using their political muscle to try to eliminate funding of the IRS. Trump is delighted by this. He gets pleasure stripping power away from others while causing fear and pain. This is what bullies do. And this is a crisis now for America because presidents tend to establish both the tone, the tenor, and the fashions of the day. Now, we've got a new president now, but we're still suffering from the echoes of the Trump presidency. I mean, just think back on how presidents have influenced the entire national zeitgeist, the German word for, you know, the spirit of the times. John Kennedy established an optimistic and forward-looking tone for our country. Jimmy Carter made it fashionable to be a thoughtful, compassionate Christian and an energy geek. Bill Clinton turned us all into policy wonks. George W. Bush transformed himself from a drunk deserter into a warrior. Barack Obama established a tone of thoughtful, elegant inclusion and diversity, which was celebrated around the world. And then came Donald Trump. He showed us what happens when the President of the United States is a bully. And bullying became fashionable. And now you've got the bullies running Congress, the Jim Jordans, the Mitch McConnells. You know, and bullying is contagious. This is one of the other reasons it's so important. I mean, now they're the Trump followers, they're bullying trans people, they're bullying pregnant women, they're bullying public school teachers, they're bullying librarians, they're bullying drag queens. Bullies are cowards deep down inside, which is why they always pick on the most defenseless, the least able to defend themselves. And bullying is contagious, which is why the Republican Party's embrace of fascist bullying is a whole of society crisis. I mean, we've seen multiple studies now that are showing that in the months after Trump was elected, bullying in schools went up back in 2017. And you got all these white Karens. Trump's bullying use of the phrase China virus led to a huge spike in attacks on Asian Americans. This is what, you know, Mitch McConnell, classic bullying. He said, one of my proudest moments was when I looked Barack Obama in the eye and I said, Mr. President, you will not fill that Supreme Court vacancy. That's classic bullying. You got the bullies who are drawn to guns and violence. They have joined the bullies in the Republican Party as well. They showed up on January 6th. Convicted foreign agent, bully, and Trump toady Mike Flynn is, you know, who said that if there was a slaughter of minorities in America like happened in Myanmar, that probably should happen here. And then up the ante when he was presented with a brand new AR-15, he said, maybe I'll find someone in Washington, D.C., right? Spoken like a lifelong bully. You got the fossil fuel companies trying to bully scientists and the rest of us into a suicide pact. Bullies and predators are, you know, basically what we have become infected with. It's become a crisis for America. And it's because of those bullies that we don't get what we want. I mean, most Americans, for example, would like to have the same kind of health care and educational system that Canadians, Europeans, Australians, and South Koreans have. You know, everybody covered, not a single medical bankruptcy, undergraduate student loan debt non-existent. They'd like good union jobs, a stable environment, quality public transportation, and top-notch primary schools. So why don't we have that? Why don't we have what Europe got in the 1940s and Canada in the 1960s? Because rich bullies, morbidly rich bullies who don't want to pay their taxes, buy off Republicans who themselves are willing to bully the American people in the press. We have January 6th bullies, anti-mask bullies, anti-vax bullies, an entire health insurance industry that bullies us, bank bullies who rip us off, Wall Street bullies stealing everything that's not nailed down, anti-abortion bullies threatening women, religious bullies threatening our courts. Pushing back hard is imperative, otherwise we lose. It is way past time for average Americans to fight back. We have been bullied enough. Democrats and average Americans must follow Alvin Bragg's example, and stand up to these bullies and put a stop to it. Now the question becomes, how do we do that? And I suppose there's lots of ways to get there. If you have any thoughts or suggestions or ideas, give me a shout. We'll be right back.